everyone, this is my video presentation about the oral cavity, salivary glands, teeth, larynx, pharynx, and trachea. So, the major structures of the oral cavity are the lips, teeth, tongue, oral mucosa, and salivary glands. The primary function of the oral cavity is prehending, masticating, and moistening of food. The lateral function prepare food for deglutition or swallowing. So inside of our mouth, we have the tongue. Tongue is highly manipulative and muscular structure used to aid ingestion with an attachment deep in the throat. And we have palates. The hard palates makes up an interior part of the roof of mouth made of bone and covered with fold and mucous membrane. The hard palate separates the oral cavity from the nasal cavities. The surface of the soft palate is a posterior continuation of the mucous membrane, but it contains no bone. In salivary glands, saliva is produced in and secreted from saliva glands. The basic secretory units of salivary glands are clusters of cells called an acini. These cells secrete a fluid that contains water, electrolytes, mucus, enzyme, all of which flow out the acinus into collecting ducts. Within the ducts, the composition of the secretion is altered. Much of the sodium is actively reabsorbed, potassium is secreted, and large quantities of bicarbonate ion are secreted. Bicarbonate secretion is of tremendous is important to ruminants because it, along with phosphate, provides a critical buffer and neutralizes the massive quantities of acid and produced the forest stomachs, small collecting ducts within the salivary glands lead into larger ducts. Eventually, forming a single large duct that empties into the oral cavity. Most of animals have three major pairs of salivary glands that differ in the type of secretion they produce. Like parotid glands produce a serious watery secretion, and submaxillary or mandibular glands produce a mixed serous and mucus secretion, while the sublingual glands secrete a saliva that is predominantly mucus in character. The basis for different glands secreting saliva of differing composition can be seen by examining salivary glands histologically. Two basic types of acinar epithelial cells exist. These are the serous cells. This is where secrete a watery fluid essentially devoid of mucus, and mucus cells which produce a very mucus-rich secretion. Saliva has many roles, some of which are important to all species and other to only a few, like lubrication and binding solubilizes dry food, and oral hygiene initiate starch. Digestion provides alkaline buffering and fluid evaporative cooling. In salivary glands, we have the parotid gland, parotid duct, dorsal buccal gland, ventral buccal gland, middle buccal gland, compact monostomatic part of sublingual gland, diffuse polystomatic part of sublingual gland, and mandibular gland and mandibular duct. Next is we have the teeth of a ruminant. The cow is the most familiar ruminant and the most useful of them. So impalas are found in the grassland region of Central and East Africa. Like other ruminants, they can regurgitate food in small amount once it has been partly digested, for chewing again, for swallowing, and further digestion. This enables them to obtain a lot of food in small amounts once it has been partly digested, for chewing again, re-swallowing, and further digestion. This enables them to obtain a lot of food in a short time, then retreat to a safe sheltered place to digest it. When grazing, an impala grabs vegetation between its spade-like incisors number 1 and the hard upper pod number 2 and pulls it up rather than biting it off. The molars number 3 are ideal for chewing. The gap between incisors and molars number 4 allows the tongue to mix food with saliva. The powerful masseter, muscle number 5, moves the jaw and down, while other facial muscles move it side to side for grinding. So, I have here another picture. It's a skull of an ox, but it has the part of teeth where the molar and premolars are present. Most ruminants have no front teeth, incisors and canines in the upper jaw, but have a hard pad against which the front teeth of the lower jaw bite, gripping the and tearing off the leaves and grass. The back teeth, premolars and the molars, have flat surfaces with hard ridges for grinding up the food when the animal is chewing the cud. Next is we have the larynx. Larynx is a voice box, is a short, somewhat cylindrical airway. Start from the root of the tongue and ends in the trachea. It is also located between third and sixth cervical vertebrae. Prevents swallowed material from entering the lower respiratory tract. Conducts air into the lower respiratory tract and produces sound. Larynx has 3 main functions in the body. It is breathing, creating vocal sounds, preventing food and other particles from getting into your trachea and lungs and the rest of your respiratory system. The larynx or voice box is composed of a series of separate plates of cartilage that form a box in the throat. Its most important function is to close off the trachea, windpipe, and lungs while eating and drinking. It opens wider if a deep breath is needed. The vocal cords and glottis and the larynx ventricles comprises the glottic space. The vocal cords are four folds of fibroelastic tissue. Two superior and two inferior ones anteriorly inserted into the thyroid cartilage and posteriorly in the arytenoid cartilage. The pharynx is located rostrally to the larynx, whilst the trachea is located caudally. The larynx is suspended from the hyoid apparatus. It is bilaterally symmetrical and tube-shaped, and can be described as a musculocartilaginous organ. The larynx moves position when the animal swallows due to its attachment to the tongue and the basihoid bone of the hyoid apparatus by the thyroid membrane. And larynx protects the trachea in swallowing, preventing aspiration of foreign material during swallowing. The larynx is moved rostrally, causing epiglottis to partially cover the laryngeal entrance. Solid foods are carried over the laryngeal entrance by the muscle of the pharynx. Fluids are deflected by the epiglottis. Closure of the glottis also prevents food passing down the larynx, and reflex stimulation of the mucosa promotes the cough reflex. The larynx also allows the passage of air to the lungs and increases the intra-abdominal pressure, and the glottis can widen by adduction of the vocal folds when breathing is vigorous. In addition to this, the larynx is used for vocalization. For the next, we have the pharynx. So, pharynx is the part of the throat behind the mouth and nasal cavity and above the esophagus and trachea. The tube that going down to the stomach and the lungs. Yes, it is found in vertebrates and invertebrates, though its structure varies across species. Pharynx, the throat. The pharynx, usually called the throat, yes, it is part of the respiratory system and digestive system. It carries air, food, and fluid down from the nose and mouth. The pharynx is the site of common illness, including sore throat and tonsillitis. The pharynx is the part of digestive system of many animals, immediately behind the mouth and in front of the esophagus. In mammals, it is where the digestive tract and respiratory tract cross, commonly called the throat. After the mouth and alimentary tract leads to the pharynx is complicated junction because the posterior nares from the nasal cavity open into it, as well as the eustachian tube, balancing the air pressure behind the eardrums. The larynx, which stops the windpipe from the lungs, and finally esophagus, which continues to alimentary canal. When a bolus of food is swallowed, the pharyngeal muscle contracts to force it down an esophagus. Then it is moving by smooth muscles. Pharynx is a funnel food into the esophagus, preventing food material from entering the lungs. And also we have trachea. Its main function is to carry air in and out of your lungs. Because it's a stiff, flexible tube, it provides a reliable pathway for oxygen to enter your body. Anatomical view of the trachea in sheep and goat. Left show red arrow, cervical ring when attached with larynx. The brown arrow, annular ligament. The green arrow, fusion tracheal ring. And black arrow, the tracheal ring in cervical region. Right picture, red arrow, cervical ring when attached with larynx. The black arrow, the annual ligament of green arrow, tracheal ring, and purple arrow, trachealis muscle. So, the trachea, colloquially called the windpipe, is a cartilaginous tube that connects the larynx to the bronchi of the lungs, allowing the passage of air, and so is present in almost all breathing animals with lungs. The trachea extends from the larynx and branches into the primary bronchi. At the top of the trachea, the cricoid cartilage attaches into the larynx. The trachea is formed by a number of horseshoe-shaped rings joined together vertically by ligaments over their substance and by the trachealis muscle at their ends, and epiglottis closes the opening to the larynx during swallowing.